a different part of my screen. Okay.
I guess my question is, if we're seekers of truth, does it ever give you pause that you have to harmonize, that you need to harmonize at least some of the scriptures? Like maybe
Not at all.
Like especially when you hear other people do it of worldviews that you disagree with, like I would think that would give you at least a little bit of pause. Like Mormons, they harmonize, flat earthers harmonize.
Not sure what you mean by flat earthers, because they're not dealing with witness testimony to the flat earth or something. I mean, harmonization is very specific. I'm thinking of it as kind of specific kind of thing. You've got different accounts of an event or something, and you try to put them together. But I kind of answered this question in my talk, but I'm going to go back to it right now. Harmonization is not a religious process. Harmonization is a historical process. When I was doing my research that went into this talk, went into a big, long series on the internet of blog posts concerning the work of Dr. Licona, I did just as much work harmonizing Plutarch as I did harmonizing the Gospels. In fact, it took me more work because I was less familiar with Plutarch. I already, researched various alleged discrepancies in the Gospels. So the normal characteristic of truthful human testimony is substantial agreement with circumstantial variety. That's how we usually find it when people are telling the truth. We even find apparent discrepancies. That was my example of the Swiss messenger. That had nothing to do with God or Jesus or the Bible or anything. That was just this account of this messenger being sent and sending people back and forth and so forth. So no, I'm not doing it because I'm a Christian. I do it with non-religious things as well, because that's a way to find out the truth. That is the best way to find out the truth.
But you said something earlier, and I forget what the context was. I think maybe it was the feeding of the 5,000. Mm-hmm. But you said, and I wrote it down, it took me a few months to think of that harmonization.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I do that with secular texts as well. You don't understand.
But to me, that sounds, well, that might be true. But when I hear that, I can't help but think, here's a person who desperately wants this to be true and is thinking of a way to make it so.
No, not at all.
Do you at least understand how it sounds like that?
So let me clarify. I'm not an inerrantist. I'm going to say that again. I'm not an inerrantist. I'm going to say that a third time. I'm not an inerrantist. All right. That was actually in my list of I call them candidate passages, where there may be a real contradiction. I could give you other examples as well, where I actually think it's not all that implausible that there is an actual contradiction. Somebody made a mistake, just made a mistake. So, I like to fiddle with things in my head. I would do this with any area of history that I was interested in. This happens to be an area of history I'm most interested in. I walk around and I fiddle with things in my head. All right. So I actually thought that was a real contradiction. Because I'm very open to that. I'm very open to that possibility.
Are you open to the idea that maybe when it says that 500 people saw the risen Jesus, that might not have actually happened?
I don't say it happened because of an a priori view of inerrancy, but there is not actually any contradiction to that in the text, so I don't see any reason to take it to be false. That I would consider it an unforced error to take that to be false, because there isn't even a discrepancy to be harmonized there. So again, as a historian, approaching this as an historian, that isn't even a discrepancy.
Right, so it's not a discrepancy, but I guess
I don't hold that a priori it's true.
I understand you. I understand it's not a discrepancy, but if you're coming from the point of view that you're willing, as an inerrantist, I'm assuming you're saying that you just don't take it at face value, that if just because the Bible says something doesn't make it true. Is that correct?
I consider them to be historical sources, and then I inductively infer how reliable they are from my research. It's not that they're I'm going to assume that they've got to be true because it's in the Bible, and the Bible is my religious authority. So that's
Wait a minute, what did you just say in the beginning of that sentence? You do assume it's historical sources?
I treat them as they're putative historical sources. Certainly on the face of them, they exist. And then I evaluate their reliability in an inductive fashion. just as I would with any putative
But
historical
are you open
source.
to the idea that when it says that 500 people saw the risen Jesus, that might not be historical?
It's not logically impossible that it is not historical.
Okay.
But I see no reason to think that it is not historical.
Well, maybe because it's only mentioned once.
Inductively. I think I've answered your question now, Doug. So I think we're going to move on to another question now.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug, for that. Okay, let's move on to, we've got a few more submitted questions.